evening, everyone. This is Ashley from Written in Ash. Today I'm going to be reading another short horror story book, or a short horror story from Short Horror Story Books. This one is called The Mirror. Hugo Hoogan lived alone. He had no family, no real friends, not even a pet. Monday through Friday, he went to work at his office. Hugo was an accountant. Every day he added columns of numbers. Once every 2 weeks, he made out the paychecks for his company. That was the closest he ever came to the other employees, typing their names on a paycheck. Hugo spent the weekends alone. On Saturdays, he watched television and he carefully read through every piece of junk mail he had received during the week. Hugo always answered the ads for the free information. On Sundays, he read the paper and took a walk. He didn't mind living such a solitary life. He didn't like people, really. But sometimes Hugo could tell when he had been alone so too long. Sometimes when he had to talk to someone, his voice sounded like a stranger's. When that happened, he made a point of eating out in a restaurant. He would ask the waitress questions and listen to what other people were saying. That usually got him back to normal. One Monday morning, Hugo woke up at exactly 7:30 as he did every other morning. It had been a 3-day weekend because of a holiday on Friday. Hugo had not left his apartment for 3 days. The weather had been too bad to take a walk on Sunday, so he had stayed in and watched television and read the papers. Hugo groaned and stumbled out of bed. His head felt groggy this morning. He went into the bathroom and turned on the cold water. Then he splashed his face with the water to try and clear his head. But he still felt strange. After he had dried his face, Hugo looked in the mirror. He always did that in the morning. Hugo looked in the mirror for a long time this morning. He didn't seem to be thinking straight, and what he saw in the mirror didn't make sense. He stared straight into the reflection of his eyes. Then he looked at his nose, his mouth, his forehead. The more he looked at himself, the more it seemed that he was looking at the face of a stranger. "That's not me," he thought to himself. "That can't be me." But as he moved his face up and down, the reflection also moved up and down. Hugo shut his eyes and shook his head back and forth. And he looked in the mirror again. The stranger's face hadn't gone away. It was staring right back at him. "My God," said Hugo. He put his hands to his face. It felt the same. Suddenly he needed to know that he was still himself. He ran to his closet. His clothes were all neatly hung in rows, arranged according to color. He pulled open a dresser drawer. His wallet was there, and the driver's license had his name on it. Hugo sighed with relief. Then he looked up at the mirror over the dresser. The stranger was looking back at him. "I don't look like that." He dressed himself in one of his oldest suits, one that he had worn hundreds of times. It made him feel secure. Then he went into the kitchen, put on some coffee, and poured himself a bowl of cereal. As he picked up the big cereal spoon, he saw the stranger's distorted face staring at him upside down. "I don't look like that," Hugo repeated. Suddenly he thought of a way to prove it. A picture, he thought. There must be a picture of me, but he couldn't think of any. No one ever had taken a picture of him that he could remember. He began to shake inside. Wasn't there any way to prove that he wasn't the stranger he saw reflected in the mirror? By now it was 8:15. He would have to be at his desk in 45 minutes. Hugo didn't know what to do. He couldn't go into his office looking like a stranger, but he couldn't stay home either. It was the 15th of the month. The employees were supposed to get their checks today. Hugo got ready to go to the office. He avoided looking at any mirrors. As he locked the door of his apartment, his neighbor, Mrs. Reynolds, passed him on the street. "Good morning, Mr. Hoogan." Then he realized what it meant. It looked like his old self to her. He almost went back into the apartment to look in a mirror, but then he remembered that there was a mirror at the front of the bus he took to the office. He walked to the bus stop and waited, humming a song. He felt better now. The bus pulled up and Hugo walked on. As he gave the driver his money, he stooped to look into the mirror. To his horror, the stranger stared with an eager grin on his face. Hugo slumped down into a seat. He rode all the way to his office with his eyes shut. There was a window by his seat, and every time he looked at it, the reflection of the stranger's face was there. At 9 o'clock, Hugo was in his office, waiting for someone to notice. But no one did. The woman who worked in the accounts department with him acted perfectly normal. They paid no attention to him than they usually did. Hugo felt as though he were going mad. 4 times during the day he went to the restroom to check. The mirror always confirmed his fears. He looked like a total stranger. And no one had even noticed. Hugo went home that night and went directly to bed. He hid in his darkened bedroom until sleep put his exhausted mind to rest. When he woke the next morning, he was afraid to look in the mirror. He avoided it, but he had to shave if he went to work. It was hard shaving the stranger's face. His hands were shaking. It went like that Tuesday morning and Wednesday morning and Thursday morning. Friday morning, Hugo woke up at 7:15 and lay in bed for a very long time. He didn't want to get up. He felt as though he couldn't go on, living with that stranger's face. He stayed in his bedroom for an hour. Finally, the fear of being alone with the face all day forced him out of bed. He decided he could go to work even though he was late. He went into the bathroom and began to shave automatically. Then he dropped his razor. It was his own face, back in the mirror again. Hugo felt all over his face. It was really him. This was how he looked. He let out a crazy laugh. The stranger had gone, disappeared, and he was himself again. Hugo finished shaving, dressed, and rushed out of the house without having breakfast. He was eager to go to work now, eager to have people see him. As he was locking his front door, Mrs. Reynolds passed by on the street. She looked at him suspiciously and didn't say good morning, but Hugo was too happy to notice she was acting strangely. He sprang up the step into the bus and handed the driver his money. Stooping down, he saw his own face smiling back at him in the driver's mirror. On the ride into the office, he would turn to the window every few minutes. He wanted constant reassurance that his face would be there in the reflection. It always was. At 9:30, Hugo pushed open the door to the accounts department. The receptionist was calling to him from her desk in the hallway, but he didn't pay attention. He wanted to get to his desk. He was late. Hugo strode across the room to his desk, which sat in a corner. He put his briefcase on the desk and sat down in his chair. He noticed that the constant sound of typing in the room had stopped. There was no sound at all, as a matter of fact. Hugo smiled as he saw Miss Rose, the head clerk, walking toward his desk. "Yes, Miss Rose," he said. Miss Rose stopped a few feet from his desk. "Who are you?" she asked. Hugo laughed at her joke. Miss Rose was being very friendly today. "Why are you sitting in Mr. Hugin's desk?" Miss Rose demanded. Hugo stopped laughing. He looked into Miss Rose's eyes. The truth crept like a sinister madman into his mind. Miss Rose was looking at a total stranger. He could see that she didn't recognize him. Hugo gripped both sides of his desk. "Who are you?" Miss Rose repeated, but Hugin didn't answer. His mind was too busy making a strange spiraling descent into total madness. The end.
Don't be scared. Like, subscribe, share.